So what is resentment? What do you think resentment is, Elise?
I guess just like unresolved anger, like it's like you were angry or stressed out or upset by something, but then like it wasn't resolved or spoken about, or even like maybe it was, but then there was no follow through.
Yeah, there's no
Uh,
resolution.
yeah, and and so it kind of like sits in this like dark warm corner, like growing mold, little by little, slowly, but you don't really like. Maybe you're not totally aware of it.
The stinky cheese of your life just sits there growing mold.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the idea. So where this came from is somebody that was in my life started smoking again, and I didn't want to be with somebody who smoked. And I was but it's something I had zero control over, none. You can try to have control, you can try to bitch and moan and complain and blah 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 blah, and there's two sides to that. One, being a former smoker kind of made me a hypocrite, and I get it, but I also know the ripple effect of that kind of behavior in your life ends up affecting everything and everyone you're with. And when I know where that's going to go, I didn't, I just was really stuck in this idea that this sucks, I don't like this, but yet I couldn't do anything about it. And so, like, to me, the resentment is something that builds up, that it's kind of an unresolved issue, like you were talking about. It's something that happened that I found no resolution to. And so when I have no resolution to this, then it just kind of sits there and lingers and manifests all these other things. And what I noticed is, when I couldn't deal with the thing that I actually wanted to deal with, what it did is it amplified every other behavior between us that normally I wouldn't give two shits about. Pissed me off to no end. Why'd you leave the dishes in the sink? Why didn't you take out the trash? Why do you do this? It's because the reality is, since I couldn't deal with the thing I wanted to deal with, it magnified everything else in my life, or in our life, that I deal with. So, kind of the ripple effect of this is I started getting pissed off about little things, and then got to the place where I kind of forgot, well, I don't know if forgot, but kind of couldn't deal with the initial thing, and so it started to magnify every other aspect of our relationship until it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, eventually, I think it goes to the place where it blows up the entire relationship. It didn't in this case, but blows up the entire relationship. And then what happens is, when there's nobody else there to vent my disdain and my anger on, then I turn it inwards towards myself and start beating the shit out of myself.
Yeah, and well, I guess with any other emotion, like I think addicts, but just humans in general, like we forget that like people don't make us feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you made me this way. Like, how dare you do this thing? And now I'm stuck with this feeling, and it's all your fault. And like that feels easier than being like for me, just being like, no, actually the reason I resent you is because I haven't communicated what the fuck is I'm really feeling about this,
Mm-hmm.
or made any boundaries or done anything to cope with my own emotions about it. And it's easier if I'm just like, fuck you, and can't believe you did this, and I'm gonna sit over here and be stressed out about it, and then blame you that the stress is increasing.
Yeah.
That
one's
all my shit.
But that one's great because it absolves me of any responsibility to have to do anything. If I could just discharge all my shit onto you, then I'm free of all responsibility.
Yeah, and
Which
then they
seems to
leave,
make it
and you're
easier.
like, why did you abandon me?
Yeah, and then that's also your fault. And so it's
Right.
it's taking a lot of this shit and shoving it outside of me and making everybody else responsible for the way I feel. You know, and I was sitting yesterday trying to think, is there anything in our life that basically isn't a story that we created? You know, is every single aspect of our reality basically a story? And I think it is. I mean, I couldn't think of an example of something that's not. I mean, like the sun comes up. There's certain things that are just, you know, that just are. But the way I approach the world, you know, like in that situation, the story, you know, because our brain drives towards stories. So the story I started telling myself about the situation when somebody else was smoking, well, they just don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about me. They don't, blah, blah. And we focus all of this story to soothe some situation to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
As opposed to facing some hard reality like, well, you know, this isn't something I want in my life, and, you know, maybe I need to make a more effective or different decision about that. You know? And when I have the inability to do that, you know, then I just start creating stories that affect, you know, that validate my version of a story.
Yeah.
You know? So like you were talking about in the beginning of this, you know, having a hard conversation with somebody. Like I remember somebody online talking about, you know, instead of, you know, when you see somebody, you know, it's kind of somebody you know, but you don't really care if you see them again or not. But you're like, hey, we should really get together sometime, when that's not what you feel. You know, because then you're basically setting yourself up for something that's not going to happen. You know it's not going to happen. You don't want it to happen. You know, but you're setting up a scenario that's false. You know, as opposed to sitting there, hey, what's going on? How are you? Few seconds of uncomfortable silence. Well, gotta go. Bye. You know.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, hi, I'm here. Like, you know, like me, accept me, validate me. Even though, like, it's not really what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like how we walk around in the world. And I think that's the problem that gets in the way of honest communication too. If it's like, oh, but then you won't like me and you won't accept me, and then maybe you'll go away. And it's like, it's really self-driven, because it's like, well, if this isn't really what you want, then maybe they should go away.
Mm-hmm.
But since I can't handle abandonment, I'm just going to be a people pleaser about it. And if you really piss me off, then I can be resentful. And it never is my fault.
Yeah, I want to be wanted, or like the very great addict part of this is like, you better invite me to I don't want to go to your party, but if you don't invite me, I'm going to be pissed. You know, or the even better version of, oh, you think I'm fucked up? I'm going to go hurt myself, and then you'll learn. You know, the twisted little weird way, you know, that the manifestations of our old life. So how do you have a really hard conversation with somebody that may be uncomfortable or hard, and you know it might not have a good outcome, but yet you have it anyway?
I think like just being really honest with yourself, you know, and I don't know, like it's so important to have a strong support group, because it's like I can handle fear of rejection or abandonment or loss, or I can handle all that if I have a good support system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that makes it maybe a little bit easier for me to get honest, because it's like, if I say how I feel and it pushes this person away, that's gonna hurt, but I'll still be okay.
Yeah. You know, I'm still gonna be all right with me. I mean, there's a huge piece of self-worth to this that, you know, like a lot of us, I don't want to make somebody else feel bad, because if I do, then they may leave, and if they leave, then I'll be alone. You know, and so, you know, looking at, you know, a lot of the pieces of, like, we have a whole section of the book about self-worth, or just a lot of tools about self, you know, and, you know, I think the lack of self-worth is a driver of a lot of actions. Like, why do we do really toxic things? Why do we hang out with really toxic people? Why do we, you know, get into this endless series of toxic relationships? It's basically a different version of the same story, you know, or different players in the same story, but yet end up, you know, being the same exact thing over and over and over again, with just new characters.
Yep.
You know, to be in there, and I'm actually trying to flip to one of these. I think I remember my own book better.
Well, and I think that's part of, like what you're saying, like, maybe if, like, we repeat these patterns, like, over and over until we just get fucking tired of them. You know, like recovery is all about, like, becoming more aware, and then when you're aware and you're doing this thing over and over and over, like, maybe that's the driver sometimes. It gets to a point where you're like, fuck this. Like, I need to get out of this fucking pattern.
Well, yeah, so first you got to identify that there is a pattern, or see that there's some sort of, like, I didn't notice for the longest time, you know, a big driver of most of, I mean, like, I really think my first drug of choice was approval.
Yeah.
You know, I would go to any length, any extreme, anything to gain other people's approval. Because if you said I'm good, then I must be. Because on the inside, I'm knowing that I don't really like me, and so I'm probably a piece of shit. But if you say I'm good, then I must be. You know, and it was this always constant cycle of chasing approval. You know,
yeah.
And wherever, you know, the beginning origins of that we could dive into, but that's a different story. But, you know, how do you start? So there's a big piece of self-worth is, how do you, you know, if it came to you, at least a little more self-worth, if you would, please. Be like, what the fuck does that mean? How do you actually start to develop a sense of self, or a sense of self-worth?
Yeah, I still think, like, other people, like, teach us how to do that stuff. Like, if I don't know what it looks like to have self-worth, I can't just, like, go out into the world trying to find it. But, like, if I'm around people, like, if I go to meetings or something, and I see people who look, like, genuinely content, or just, you know, joyful, then I'm probably, like, gonna follow or ask them more about, like, how they got to that place.
Yeah, so be around people that can model some semblance of self-worth. Can be a big piece of it. You know, so I'm going through, like, we have a lot of questions in the book that are about self-worth. You know, if I'm trying to achieve dignity and confidence and self-esteem and respect and honesty and gratitude and, you know, being of service to others and having integrity and some humility and feeling valued and valuing others. You know, it was really hard for me when I started to look at what I like, how do I develop those things in myself. So you're right, there is one way, is being around other people that actually have achieved the goals that I want to achieve. You know, to be able to do that. But then I started to think about, you know, what do you value most in your best friends? You know, not, you know, they have a car or they have whatever. It's just what aspects of their character do you actually like? Like, what do you like in your very best friends? What about them draws you to them?
Humor.
Okay.
Loyalty.
Humor, loyalty. What else?
Empathy.
empathy, respect, kindness, you know, somebody who calls me on my bullshit, you know,
Yeah.
people that can actually say, yeah, you know, yes, you did fuck that up, but go try again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people that I can be around, that I can look. And so it kind of made sense to me. If I like that in them, really high chance they're going to like that in me. So maybe those are points that I can start to work on myself. You know, letting my actions match my words, and doing the things I say I'm going to do, and being the places I say I'm going to be. You know, and looking to all these things, you know.
And there are like layers to that, you know, like for sure I felt like to be honest was really, really hard in the beginning, but like doing something like something scary for me that was honest was like just like telling my PO that I relapsed. And like, you know, that felt like the end of the world, like shitting bricks to say. But then I got the help that I needed. But like honesty today for me more is like checking in with my gut. You know, like do I feel like trapped in some way? Like, do I feel like something needs to change? And if so, what part of that do I have control over?
Yeah. So does something need to change? Do I need to change? You know, I mean, there's this big piece of being honest all the time that is scary because there's so much unknown. You know, there's a lot of vulnerability in honesty. You know,
Yep.
what if they don't agree with what I consider to be honest? You know, so
Yeah.
you know, doing
Yeah, and
those
I think
things.
that's so important. Why like the social support is so important, right? Because like in meetings, like you can get honest, but nobody judges you or kicks you out, and so you learn like, okay, maybe I can do this scary, difficult thing because I'm not gonna be totally alone for doing that.
Yeah, and looking at, you know, and even some people do judge you. Well, fuck them. Other people's opinions, none of my business. You know, but trying to see do I have any kind of internal validation? You know, can I actually be in a room and gain the same thing without other people being there? You know, or is it always, is my validation always external? You know, I'm not saying it doesn't feel good to be, you know, complimented or told things that are good about you from other people. But how do you do that for yourself? How do you get to the place where you are your, you know, where you validate your own self?
Yeah, I think that takes time. I think there's a lot in the beginning that is dependent on others because we're growing that like it's hard to be like I'm doing this for myself when you still don't care about yourself. Like you're still getting there. And then I think it kind of but then you feel safe, so then you do maybe you're a little bit more honest or and then you learn that okay that's okay, you know, like the roof didn't cave in, and so then you do it a little bit more, you know, and then eventually like the more times that you've done something of integrity, you've actually like you've built up more self-worth. And then you are becoming more like I am doing this for me, and I'm more comfortable with me, and I like me more, and so I can do scary things more.
Totally. And coming into a place where, like, for me, the very first place that I got that was through doing service or volunteering. You know, because when I first did it, I was like, I want to be your bitch. I don't want to do this shit. You know, but it was just as simple as, you know, at a meeting, setting up chairs and making coffee. You know, and the first person that came in, it was like, wow, dude, it looks good in here. Nice work. And I was like, it does? I mean, I literally remember standing kind of back and be like, holy shit. I didn't have anybody say that to me in years, like anything positive to me like that in years. And that made me want to do it more. Now, was that external and come from somebody else? Absolutely. But behind that, it made me want to participate, and it made me start to see the first glimmers that maybe I do have value, and maybe I do have a sense of what I can put into the world with other people. And then and it made me want to do it more. In the process of doing more, you get involved with more people, and you get more involved with, you just start to breed more self-confidence, more self-worth, more connection, more community. We're tribal creatures, and to be connected with others, we're biologically predisposed to do so.
Yeah.
We have chemicals in our body that incentivize us hanging out with each other, and being part of, a bigger group. So going through and, thinking about how are you valuable in your community? If I'm sitting here for a while, I'm like, well, hell, I don't know, not really. Maybe that's something I can go work towards. Maybe there's something I can do in that case to actually start to get out in the world. I mean, I truly believe the best way to work on being a better version of yourself is being a service to others. It's a great way to change a shitty day. Stop worrying about me and go do something good for somebody else, and watch how quickly your day changes. There's so many pieces to that are critical to just finding some little semblances of self-worth. Service was the biggest piece to that. But
and then there's I guess there can be the flip side to that is like, are you also practicing some sort of self-care, whether you feel like it or not? Because I think there are some people too who are very dependent on, I only feel good when I'm doing something for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other direction, like too much service, too much.
Yeah, I mean there can be definitely a
need for helping everybody else and letting themselves fall off. And I think some of that too. It's also like a habit that we're building. Like my sponsor in the beginning was like, I just drink a lot of water. That's important for me taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I didn't know what the fuck that meant, or how that was going to affect me. But my sponsor carries around a gallon of water with her everywhere. I guess I'm going to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just do it because somebody who seems peaceful is doing it. And I feel like this is the same way as addiction. If I saw somebody all fucked off, I was like, sweet, what do you have? Give it to me. Show me how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel the way that you look. I wasn't like, I need a textbook about how drugs work in the brain, and I need to study this and know how this works logically, and then I'll try it. Nobody does that. Mm-hmm. And so we don't need that for recovery either. I don't need to know what exactly is a higher power, or I don't need to know the science and anything behind everything in order to try it. I don't need to know how water is self-care. I don't need to know I don't need to feel like doing a certain thing that's suggested to me in order to just try it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like building self-worth is so much of that in the beginning. This is not something I want to do, and this is not natural, but the person who seems kind of serene does it and tells me to do it. And so I should probably just give it a try, and know that if I fail in some way, these people are also still here for me.
Yeah, and you can see what, I see a lot of people come into, 12-step rooms or other rooms, and they just make it their entire existence, which is cool for a little while. until you
Right.
get burned out on everybody and everything you're doing, because there's no diversity and there's so much more to recovery than just, meetings and sponsorship. There's my physical health and my mental health and my spiritual health and, my relationships that are healthy, and my family, dynamics, rebuilding those things, and, trying to gain some financial health and, just changing everything, but, not everything all in one day, but little pieces all the time, maintaining a
Yeah.
job that I like, or trying to find some sort of independence towards all those things. I mean, I think a lot of those things collectively turn into pieces of self-worth.
Yeah.
A schedule
Yeah,
and a routine.
totally. And it's and I and yeah, like where we go with it or like how we progress like looks a little different from everybody, but like the basics are pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking accountability and being honest and having a support system, and like we may not understand why that gets us started in the right direction with self-worth, but like once we do all that, it's kind of like we understand where to go from there. Like I cannot work a budget if I can't be honest, because what am I going to do? Write down a bunch of numbers that aren't even like
Real
accurate?
and
You know
real.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like how am I going to work on relationships when I can't even say, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I fucked up.
Yeah. So finding some components that are honest. I mean, and looking what's really behind it. Because if I don't, then I was looking in here, and then I start doing a bunch of self-sabotage shit, where I start destroying my own life. If I'm not paying attention to, you brought up bringing a gallon of water. It just reminded me of what I was using. I never went anywhere without it, ever. I always had something with me, 100% of the time. Why? Because I had an outcome I was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I wanted to completely avoid me all the time, 24 hours a day. Couldn't be present with myself. Great. So I know how to accomplish a goal. So instead of it being, focused on detachment, how do I focus on connection? If that's my essentially new goal now, how do I do that 24 hours a day to stay present with my own self? To where I'm not uncomfortable in my own skin. Or to where I come in and I, get everything really good and then just know the other shoe's going to drop. So eventually I'm just like, well, fuck it. I may as well just destroy it now on my own. So I can beat that, it's going to happen someday. So going down the self-sabotage route,
Yeah.
where I just start fucking things up, or just start destroying things, because people are like, well, yeah, every one of us admits that we've done that, but not paying attention as to why. So what causes us to go down the route where we start blowing up our own life? What causes to go down the aspect of, do I want to fuck things up? What is it for you? I mean, maybe not now, but
That's interesting because I feel like it has a lot to do with honesty for me. Like, usually self-sabotage for me starts coming from like some sort of stressor or overwhelm has happened in my life. And
like what? Give me an example.
it could be anything from like working too much to being in a relationship that's not really for me to you know like spending too much money on certain things, and then that I don't need, and not, where it can come from different places, but it all has to do with like that stress only happened because I avoided getting honest about what was happening in the moment. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like I wouldn't have the buildup of relationship stress if I communicated how I felt to the other person. Like, I wouldn't have financial stress if I sat down and got honest about the numbers. I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have work stress if I made boundaries about what works for me. You know what I mean? And so it's just all like my inability to like sit the fuck down and get honest about how I feel, even if it's just myself, is what leads to the overwhelm, is what leads to fuck this and fuck everything, and now we're back to the resentment, right? It's like, it's your fault, it's this stress, it's that stress. No, it's me not dealing with the stress.
Handling my own shit and creating a different story. And it's funny how this all wrapped back around to where we started. Because a lot of people, me included, I know when things are going really well, I'm inevitably waiting for the wave to crest and the whole thing to come crashing down. And why? Because it always has. But the difference is now, the reason it always had before is because I was using, and when you're using, you cannot maintain any kind of consistency or healthy life because you have different objectives and different goals, that only have to do with the moment or right now. Why do I have to worry about, being honest or being, believable or consistent or keeping a schedule or doing any of those things? I'll deal with that shit later. Because right now I'm going to get my needs met. Well, later comes. And so then my life gets blown up and then I spend my whole time trying to fix it. I fuck up my life and then I fix it. I fuck it up and then I fix it. I fuck it up and I fix it. Really good at that part. But the maintaining part took practice. And I talk to, when I ask people all the time, like, why do you blow your shit up? Well, the other shoe's going to drop for sure. Okay, well, based on your old life, yeah, it probably would. But now that you're not, or are you pulling your old life into your present life? Because when you're not using, you don't have to blow things up and things can actually be maintained. I'm not saying shit's perfect all the time.
If like the same shit kept happening, was it because you kept doing the same shit? And like, if you're not doing the same shit, does that have to be the story?
Yeah, you don't have to have the same outcome. If I'm doing different shit, maybe I can have a different outcome. Yeah. Or as you say, if you want to live a different life, do different shit. Because that does create a different outcome. And
like acceptance of reality, which is also honesty to me, is just like, and bad shit will happen no matter what I'm doing anyways.
Yeah.
That's life, and I have to accept that. But like, that doesn't mean it's got to be like the whole world falls apart. It's just like this one thing happened, and if I don't freak out over that one thing, then I don't have to blow up everything else. It can just be this one part of my life is really painful, and I'll work through it.
Yeah, and then get to the other side.
Fall off the whole fucking cliff. You just tripped.
Yeah. It's exactly, just because you bump into the curb doesn't mean you have to drive off the cliff.
Yeah.
So going...
so extreme.
Yeah, everything sucks. I have to make everything terrible. So thinking of not destroying my own... we were talking on the last podcast about, how if nothing matters, everything is an option. And I think behind that conversation, so basically for those who didn't hear it, it's the idea is if nothing matters to me, about me, for me, in my life, then that means everything else is an option. It's kind of the short form version of it. Because if I don't care about me, well, why not rob a bank? If I don't care about me, why not rip my grandma off? If I don't matter about me, why not shoot up heroin? What the fuck does it matter? Why not risk, doing fentanyl because I might die? I don't really give a shit.
Yeah.
Because if you have no self-preservation and no desire to be here, what the fuck does it matter? Okay, so how do you upend that? How do you get to a place where shit does matter? How do I get to the place where I actually want to be here and present? Because the more I want to be here, It's like all of these toxic, crazy things start falling off the table as an option. The more I want to be here. So identifying, a big piece of me was having a schedule and routine that I wanted to stick to, things that I actually wanted to show up for. Things like, building relationships with my nieces, my family, actual friendships, not transactional relationships, healthy relationships with somebody else, a job that, you may like doing, travel, just baby steps at things, starting to identify one or two little things in your day that you actually like doing. Like I like going to that goddamn hot yoga studio, I don't like it in the moment, but I like the outcome.
Yeah, and even if like you're not even like totally like I like this, but even just at least like I think this is a little bit better than what I used to do.
Yeah. I mean the baby steps of it, it's
right.
It's creating a life that you want more than the life you had using. I know we talk about that a lot, but the practical reality of that is, in this last year, I've had a lot of things suck, but I loved how I was able to show up at them. That it wasn't some mechanism of avoidance, that it wasn't me just running away from myself. We were talking the other day at a meeting about the difference between isolation and solitude. And isolation is when I'm trying to avoid everything else, and solitude is just seeking more time for myself. That I'm actually comfortable with. And because when I'm not uncomfortable in my own skin, then everything else, gets much easier to deal with. And I actually like being present now. That's what was so shocking to me about the surgery I just went through is like, I looked at the feeling I had coming out of anesthesia and I was like, oh, this shit sucks. This is what I used to want. That I used to go to the ends of the earth to achieve. And now I'm just like, oh, I don't like that. And I was like, why? And it's like, because I actually like being present in my own life now. I like seeing the things that happen. I like waking up with optimism and hope and possibility. That, today might be a good day.
Yeah.
Not just hope that I, don't get pulled over. Which was the high
and
water mark before.
And it's like you got there from all the baby steps that you've taken all along the way, which have led you up to that place.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, we don't see how what we're doing is going to get us there, but we also, like, don't have to.
Yeah.
We just have to trust that it will. That if that's what, just like I trusted somebody who was like, stick this substance in your mouth and see how it goes. Snort that shit up your nose. Like, I could have been like, well, I don't know. I don't trust you. And, I don't really know you. And, I did not have any of those thoughts. And when I got clean, I was just as desperate as always. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, if someone was like, hey, tell me some things you're powerless over. I wasn't like, I don't see where this is going. Mm-hmm. I was just like, okay. You seem cool, and like I think that's just so important. Is like I don't know where this is going. None of it makes sense. I don't know if I care. I don't know if this is gonna work out or not. None of that matters. All that matters is like if someone tells you should probably share what's going on with you at this meeting, you just do it, and that it's not going to get comfortable until you've done it. Like, I was not a professional meth smoker until I had practiced for a while. It was like, you light this part and you twist this for me and tell me how to breathe. And then with time it was like, oh, now I'm doing it drunk with my eyes closed, half asleep. It became comfortable. And that's just how anything works. It's not going to feel comfortable for me today to communicate honestly, but it's a hell of a lot more comfortable than it used to be because I've been practicing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of things in recovery are practice skills. Well, I really like this conversation today, to kind of think of the takeaways from today, to be able to look at, having some hard conversations up front, doing the things that may be uncomfortable, not because they're uncomfortable, but because, because I want the outcome that comes with it. Being able to look at some sense of how do I work on my self-worth, because without that, I end up blowing my life up. I end up self-sabotaging myself, and I end up dragging the residue of my past into today. And then taking the fact that, a lot of this just takes some good old-fashioned practice and knowing that you're going to fuck it up along the way. And it's not going to go perfectly, but, consistency and practice over time, you will get better at anything. And especially this recovery thing, and especially when looking at self-worth. I know none of us are where we want to be, but we're sure the hell not where we were. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, well, cool. Well, thanks, Lisa. Appreciate this today, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.